Combining innovation, technology, and faith is how Tamara Jackson, a longtime speaker, coach, leader, and mentor, is unlocking a new level of receiving and elevating organizations in the nonprofit sector and beyond, as you'll discover on this episode of Making Our World Better.
Welcome to the Making Our World Better podcast, where you will find motivation and encouragement through lively conversations with inspirational people who every day are making our world a better place. Now, here's your host, Jay Clark.
Welcome to the podcast. I am Jay Clark, and I am looking forward to a conversation with Tamara Jackson, the visionary founder of Beaconship, a platform dedicated to equipping faith-driven leaders to transform industries and tackle global challenges. She's also the CEO of Lead Reviver, an AI-powered sales re-engagement platform that helps businesses and nonprofits unlock the hidden potential of their lead databases. Very cool. Can't wait to learn more. With more than 2 decades of experience in ministry, entrepreneurship, and philanthropy, Tamara brings a unique perspective to the challenges facing faith-based leaders today. As a former vice president at a Fortune 500 financial institution, Tamara has led multi-million-dollar projects and managed complex operations in sales performance, team development, and customer engagement. Her leadership and strategic insights have driven significant improvements in performance management, associate satisfaction, and call center operations, making her a trusted voice in high-stakes environments. Her work is bridging devoted servant leaders and the investors that support them to enable extraordinary outcomes and empower a better, brighter world, which makes her the perfect guest for this podcast. Tamara, thanks so much for joining me today.
Jay, thank you so much for the opportunity to get to know you better and to hopefully share something that will inspire the audience.
Well, I know you've probably told it a million times, but we'll make it a million plus one. But can you kind of share the story of your journey to the work that you're doing today?
Yeah, I will tell you, Jay, and maybe someone that's watching or listening can identify. It has been a roller coaster ride to get to where I am today. So I grew up knowing that I wanted to work in business. I was undecided, honestly. I look back at my old high school yearbook. Is it the corporate path? Or is it the path of entrepreneurship for me? Mm-hmm. So because I didn't quite know how to approach the entrepreneurship side, I started out in corporate, as you shared, had a very successful career at a Fortune 500 company. But about halfway through my time there, I started getting this feeling that there was something more that I should be doing. So like many people, I started what I refer to as a side hustle. So I kept my corporate career, started out in the entrepreneurial space, and I did that for a really, really long time because I was trying to discern like what is the right timing to step away from corporate and really walk into this. So during that time period, I had a number of different entrepreneurial ventures, some successful, some not so much. I learned a lot along the way. And then what ended up happening is I went through a really challenging period. My mom was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer.
Oh, geez.
And in taking that journey with her, I left where I live, Charlotte, North Carolina, moved back to Virginia to support her through that journey. It was during that period that I really started to think about legacy, what I wanted my remaining time to be focused on. And when my mom eventually ended up transitioning on, I kept reflecting on the conversations that we had during that year-long journey. And one of the things that she encouraged me to do, Jay, and maybe this will help someone in the audience, is she told me, Tam, sometimes you have to take a chance. Yep. And that continued to play in my mind over and over again. And as I started having conversations with some of my peers that I admired and respected, I realized that there was a gap, that people were looking for inspiration, yes, but also wisdom from those that had achieved a level of success in Christian leadership that they aspired to. I can remember plainly one conversation I had. The young lady said, I am walking into everything that I've prayed for. I'm seeing my career as a speaker, as a coach, all of these things grow, but I feel woefully unprepared because I prayed for this, but I don't know how to juggle all of that. And that's what ultimately led me to found Beaconship, where one of the things that we do is bring on to our show, The Beacon Show, amazing leaders that have blazed the way, that have accomplished amazing things. And we ask them to unpack it. How did you get to where you are? What are the steps that you took? And what are the lessons that you learned along the way? Yeah. So that's part one. Part two, you mentioned Lead Reviver. I have been a fan of AI for a really long time. I was actually using it in 2021.
Wow.
Yeah, believe it or not.
Early adopter. Love it.
Yeah. So in the marketing space, AI was actually starting to really make some waves because it was showing us how to be able to put together compelling copy in record time. And so I knew the power of AI, and I was just trying to figure out, okay, what is the best place that I can make an impact? Because impact is really, really important to me.
Yeah.
So as I started to see the transformation in AI, seeing ChatGPT come onto the scene and have some amazing conversations, I realized that there was an opportunity to leverage AI to fill in some of the gaps that smaller operations really tend to struggle with. So I'm a business owner, but I don't have time to keep up with this pipeline of leads that I've spent a lot of money on and a lot of businesses generating. Or I'm a nonprofit. I have this donor base that I want to keep informed and I want to inspire to give, but I don't have the staffing to be able to support that. And that's where Lead Reviver comes to the rescue, because now we're able to leverage the power of AI, coupling it with discernment to put in place a system that allows them to stay in contact with these leads and build a relationship that ultimately yields success. So as I said, it's been a roller coaster ride, but I'm excited about where I am right now. And I'm hoping that as we go deeper into our conversation, and I know you'll ask some really thoughtful questions, there'll be things that I can share that will maybe help a leader out there that wants to make a difference as well.
Well, that's awesome. And I'd love to dig a little bit deeper into something you just said there. And that's when working in the nonprofit industry, was there kind of an aha moment when you realize this really can have an impact for nonprofits? Because it's my experience that, nonprofits, they're the ones, they're always just like you said, they're always understaffed. They don't have people to do stuff. So they're the ones that could really take advantage of this.
Yeah. And it's actually the same thing. It's through conversations. As I started talking with leaders, believe it or not, even some really, really successful nonprofits, I'm talking about $5 million and $10 million budgets, they're still really, really small in terms of staffing, because trying to make the case for adding additional staff as you're trying to manage increasing donations can be really, really difficult. So as I started having these conversations and hearing this trend over and over again, I said, there's got to be a way that we can help to increase donations without adding to staff, because that's where we're running into the problem, right? Is I can't
the holy
really
grail of every nonprofit, right?
I can't afford to add an additional staff without increasing the donations that are coming in. So once I saw the power, and I will confess to you and the audience, as much as I love AI, the sophistication behind Lead Reviver is well above my pay grade. But I have an amazing team that can see the vision of what we're looking to accomplish and build a tool that can meet the need. So it's just through those conversations with those leaders that I realized that there was an opportunity there.
That's fantastic. Well, and something I read on your website really struck a chord with me. And that's where you said that a hard truth that many of us face is that we aren't ready to be receivers. And, longtime nonprofit guy, guilty as charged. So I'd love to kind of hear how you came to this realization and how you're helping people who are facing this and helping them overcome this. This is a big thing. It's like, well, I'm not really worthy. You kind of have that imposter syndrome or whatever it may be. But I'd love for you to unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, so it actually came about as I was doing some master classes last year in 2024. And with these master classes, our audience were those that were in the early stages of building their nonprofit. So one of the things that they very quickly realized is that the vision that God had given them was beyond their financial bandwidth to support. And so then there comes the conundrum of, okay, I have this big God-given vision, but I don't have the finances to support it.
Right.
And so they realize, hey, I'm going to have to put myself out there. I'm going to have to apply for grants. I'm going to have to be able to put myself in rooms where I am approaching donors. These are things that were very, very uncomfortable for them because they were used to giving. I heard this over and over again. They were used to giving, but now they needed to be in a position to receive. And I think in Christian circles, we've heard so many times, I actually heard it just this morning as I was doing my Bible study, it's better to give than receive.
Of course.
And when you hear that over and over and over again, what can be easy to miss, Jay, is that you have to receive in order to have something to give. And that's the aha that I'm trying to get many Christian leaders to receive is that, listen, your capacity to give increases as your capacity to receive increases. It's really a cycle of giving. When you really think about it, it's not, we don't want it to be this one-time thing where I'm only able to give one time. I want to be able to continue to give. And in order to do that, I have to be in a place where I can receive. And that means for many of us, learning some new skills, right? Because now I need to be able to position myself so that people actually see, wow, it makes sense to support this cause because I believe in the mission that they have. I know that they have a plan of how they're going to use these finances. I can see the bigger vision that they're working towards 5 years, 10 years from now. I found that many leaders, they knew what they wanted to accomplish, but being able to articulate that vision in a way that inspired donors was really, really new for them. And so that's what led me to this realization. And then, Jay, there's the everyday situations I can even reflect in my own life where the gift of the acts of service is my strongest love language. So it's really easy for me to come alongside other people and serve. But as I was going through the journey with my mom, I had to learn, oh my gosh, I need help. I need to ask my team to step up and do things they weren't doing before. I need to ask family members to support me in this journey. And I realized that there was some discomfort on my end as well. So it's something that I'm working on and we're working to help other leaders work on as well. It's just realizing that it's a cycle. We all need other people. As much as we want to give and to contribute, we also have to receive.
So I think every nonprofit exec director or development director needs to rewind about 5 minutes and listen to that about 10 more times. That's brilliant. But, outside of this kind of receiver reluctance, what are some of the bigger issues that you're seeing in the organizations that you face, especially in the nonprofit space, from a financial and a fundraising standpoint?
Yeah. And you actually hit it right on the nose. I was actually just looking at a report that came in on my website. I have what is referred to as the Beacon of Excellence scorecard. And what it's designed to do is to help articulate, here are the areas that investors or donors are looking for excellence in order to contribute. And what I tend to see over and over again is there are some key areas where leaders rate themselves and their organizations lower end. So if you're willing to say, as you're doing your assessment, I'm not feeling like I'm up to par in this area, that's huge. And I think that's an indication that we need to dig in. So the financial piece of it, being able to demonstrate that you have a diversity of sources of revenue is an area that comes up over and over again. So how do we ensure that if one source dries up, that it's not we're still able to keep operating? So being able to really communicate sustainability is one of the areas that I see. The second that I would say comes up over and over again is branding. So, in the nonprofit space, we are often very, very focused on the mission that we have.
Correct.
But we also need to recognize that the world is such now that people are looking at social media, they're looking at our websites, they're signing up for email lists, and they're looking for something that catches their attention, that distinguishes this nonprofit from this one.
Right.
And it's a very touchy subject sometimes when I mention this, Jay, but I hope those that are listening will just hang in there with me. The reality is that there is competition in the nonprofit space.
100%.
Not so much, because often when I say that, people are like, well, there's room for all of us. And I agree 100%. The reality is, though, that when people are looking to write a check for support, they have to decide, am I going to support this one or this one? How much am I going to write to each organization? And the more that nonprofit leaders, I think, recognize that that is the reality, I can say for my own self, Jay, that I get things in the mail on a weekly basis. People wanting me to support this cause and this cause. So what ends up happening when you start giving is, through the magic of marketing, your information gets passed along. And then now more and more people want you to give. So being able to distinguish yourself, when I talk about branding, I'm not just talking about logos and fonts and colors. It's about, what is your organization about? What makes it different, so that it would inspire the right people to come alongside and support you. That's an area that many nonprofit leaders really struggle with. And then the third that I would highlight is one that we touched on before, is having the right staffing. It's this constant push-pull of, hey, I know that I am wearing myself thin. I've had many leaders tell me this. It's sometimes flying all over to do events for fundraising, to meet with, constituents that they need to make sure are really up to date on what the organization is doing. But is that really a sustainable path? What does the succession plan look like in terms of the next leader stepping in? Those are things that many leaders are struggling with, simply because they don't have the revenue to the place that they can really see expanding their staff. So it creates this cycle of always wanting to get to that next level, but not seeing the path to get there.
Well, I would guess, with your background and growing up in business and an entrepreneurial bend, that you can also help a lot of in nonprofit people with this notion that, guys, you're a business. I mean, if you can go out of business, guess what? You're a business. So I think that's one thing I see a lot with nonprofit leaders is, we're going to get donations. You're a business. You have to make a business case. And that's a lot of what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, maybe you've heard it too, Jay. Sometimes when we start down that path, there's some resistance, because the tendency is to see it as ministry. And it absolutely is. At the end of the day, though, as well as I do, Jay, that we need to have revenue in order to support the operation, in order to keep the mission going. We have to have money coming in. And it does. Every church that we go into, at the end of the day, they are operating around some of the same principles that secular businesses do. The difference is what we do with the revenue that comes in the nonprofit space, right? So it's not necessarily about how much profit we can generate, how we can store up these, reserves and all of that. In the nonprofit space, you're bringing in revenue so that you can support the operation and continue to reinvest in impact. But in my mind, at the end of the day, that's the only difference is what we're doing with the money. If we don't embrace those business principles, as you've shared, it won't be sustainable. And it breaks my heart to see so many nonprofits really struggling with that thought process, because until there is some acceptance around that and a willingness to learn business principles, it's really going to be a hard road ahead.
Yeah, which is, I'm sure, one of the huge pluses that you bring to your clients. But when you talk about revenue, one thing I'd love for you to talk about a little bit, because this always is, it blows my mind a little bit, is how organizations can better prepare for this giant wealth transfer that's coming. I mean, the numbers are almost impossible for me to get my head around. $84 trillion in wealth is going to move between generations. So this new generation is going to have all this wealth, and there'll be opportunities for nonprofits to differentiate themselves to take advantage. I'd love for you to talk about that, because it sounds like that's a good piece of your work too.
Yeah, it's something that I'm very passionate about, Jay, because I can, again, pull from my own experience. When my mother transitioned off of the scene, I was a beneficiary of the Great Wealth Transfer. I didn't know it all growing up. All I could remember is what things looked like in my childhood. And that was, as we often say, robbing Peter to pay Paul. Right. But eventually things started to turn around, and my mom was able to put into place a God-ordained catch-up plan. She was able to stack away money. And then as she, transitioned off the scene, now I am sitting with this inheritance, and I was honestly overwhelmed. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have never been in this situation. I did not see it coming, so I was not preparing for it. And the reality of the Great Wealth Transfer, Jay, is that many people in my generation, Generation X, are going to be in the same position. A lot of the conversation is around millennials and Gen Z, and they will certainly see a great portion of the transfer. But Generation X is often going to be first in line, because we are taking care of aging parents, right? And so what that means for nonprofits that are watching and listening is that you really have to pay attention to the hot buttons, the interests of Generation X, because they're going to be the ones that are going to be first in line and are going to be making these decisions. So what does that mean? So what I find in my life, and also in my peers in Generation X, is that we are also, as millennials, are very impact driven, but the way that we do it may look a little bit different. So if I am supporting a nonprofit, yes, I want to support financially, but I also want a seat at the table. So Generation X wants to be a part of the solution. So nonprofits would do well to understand that and to ask some questions. How can this person that you're looking to court, if you will, to be a donor, how can you leverage their expertise to move the mission forward? Maybe they can help out from a marketing perspective. Maybe they can take on a seat on the board and help guide the strategic direction. Many people in my generation, as I said, they don't want to just write a check. That's important, but they want to be involved. So that's the first thing that I would say, is just recognizing that we want more than the dinner to recognize us for contributing to the cause. We want opportunities to be involved.
I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. I love that take, because it's one of the first, I've never really looked at it, that there's really two sides of this, that the people that the wealth is being transferred are kind of going, okay, now what now? Yep. So again, that really provides nonprofits an opportunity to say, hey, look, we can walk with you in this, and you can really use this to have an impact. So it's a fascinating take. I love it.
Yeah, that's another thing that I would say, is just recognizing that sometimes, the person that's looking at making the decision is kind of weighing their options. They're trying to figure out what the best path to take is. So it doesn't necessarily mean if they don't give right away that they don't believe in your mission, they don't believe in your cause. It just may be that they need more information. Maybe there are some things that you can put together within your organization to help them to be able to plan how they want to use their newfound wealth. I see that as a huge opportunity. I mean, being able to put together workshops and seminars that help educate those that are trying to figure this out is a great way for nonprofits to differentiate themselves. As I'm sitting here, I'm thinking about one nonprofit that I support, and one of the things that I really appreciate about them is that they often send educational material via email on how to give, right? So as you're weighing your options at the end of the year, when many people are making those decisions, like they are sending things out to say, hey, these are things that you should keep in mind as you're looking to make these decisions. That's tremendously helpful because we may have, I'm blessed to have an amazing certified financial planner that helps me along the way, but we don't talk every single day, right? So these nonprofits can really help by seeing themselves as a part of the education journey, not just as a receiver of donations. Those are just two things that I would share today.
I love it. And when you're out talking to leaders, ministry leaders, nonprofit leaders, business leaders, all the people that you're crossing paths with in your journey, is there kind of a moment when I could really help this person?
Yeah, it's normally through the conversation that I'm hearing a level of frustration. So I am blessed to be able to travel and go to many different events. Sometimes they're more towards the business end of the angle, and then sometimes they're more ministry focused. But often, what I am choosing to do is to be a part of events where leaders are able to kind of let their hair down a little bit. They're around their peers and they're talking about planning for the future. They're talking about the challenges that they're facing in their church, in their ministry, in their nonprofit. And when I hear a level of frustration of, hey, I'm doing all the things that I thought I was supposed to be doing, but I'm not getting the results that I was looking for, then that's often when I see an opportunity to help. And, back in the day, Jay, what I would have done in that situation is rely on, my education, my experience, the best practices. But now where I'm at is really helping leaders to go on a journey of understanding where is the Spirit leading me to be able to make a difference in this space. So what I've developed is this process, and I actually needed it myself. That's what often happens. When you're facing these challenges and you're needing to make these decisions, what can be a framework that you can go through to figure out what is the best next step? And if you don't mind, Jay, I'd love to just share it with the audience.
Yeah.
So I call it the GRASP method. And it starts out with G, gathering information. So I will confess that I can be a really quick decision maker at times, which in some circles is thought of as a good thing. But I've learned that sometimes it actually can create risk for me because I don't have all of the information that I need to make an informed decision. So I've learned to ask myself some questions. Okay, what can I do to get a better understanding of the problem that I am dealing with? Sometimes that means I'm doing Google searches. Sometimes that means I'm having conversations with other leaders that are in my space. Sometimes that means I'm using ChatGPT to research and find information. But I need to gather information so that I can make an informed decision. It also could be looking at the reports. What is the data telling me within my organization on what's working well and what's not working well? So that's step number one, gathering information. The second step is to reflect. I can also confess that sometimes I gather information and then I immediately run to doing.
Right.
And this step is about, okay, I need to pause. Let me reflect on what I have just learned, and then let me give myself some space. So reflection for me typically is not just, hey, I'm going to set aside 15 minutes. Often it means I'm taking a day or more to just let it sit, see what comes up for me. Sometimes I get new ideas as I'm walking my dog. Sometimes I get them when I'm in the shower. Sometimes I'm having a conversation with someone and they say something like, oh, that's something good for me to really think about. So that's what reflecting is about. The A is for ask for guidance. And I look at this from two perspectives. One, this is an intentional step to ask God for guidance because I need to understand that I don't know everything. So there are going to be some insights that I can only get from him. But then also asking some people that I think now that I've gathered the information, I've done some reflection, and I have some ideas on what direction I might want to take. I need to ask some people that are more knowledgeable in that area than I am. And I also believe in asking people, and this is sometimes tough, that I know are going to challenge me. People that are going to poke holes in my idea. They're going to ask me tough questions that I haven't thought about. I want to intentionally seek those people out because the next step is to strategize wisely. I can only put together a strategy that's rooted in wisdom if I have input. And so that's why I need that heavenly and that humanly guidance. Once I have put together a strategy, I'm still checking in to make sure that I'm at peace about the direction that I am going in. That's another piece of wisdom. If I'm feeling unsettled, it may not necessarily mean that I'm not supposed to do it, but it may mean that I need to sit with it longer. Is now the right time to do this? Or do I need to wait, for example? P is about proceeding in faith. And I say in faith because even though I've taken my time to do the due diligence and go through all those other steps, in my life and in many people, there's still going to be a lot of unknowns. Will this work? I don't know.
Right. There's never 100% certainty.
Never
That's
100%, right? No. So the proceeding in faith is being willing to take a step. Sometimes it can be a small step and continue to check in. And do I still have the peace? Am I feeling like things are going in the right direction? Is favor working? Or am I trying to force this? That's another thing that I've learned is favor doesn't mean everything's going to be easy and effortless, but it does mean that there is grace. And when I let favor lead, I find that things tend to go much, much smoother. I get much better results than trying to make things happen. And so this method is what, when I encounter those leaders that are in that frustration mode, we walk through this process. And then what ends up happening is we get the insights that we need to figure out what is the next best step. And then we now have a mechanism to continue checking in to determine the next step after that. Now, that means that this may not be this in 30 days we're done. I know we're in a culture where we want a 6-week, 8-week,
3-month earning reports.
But the reality is that sometimes it takes time. But I invite the leaders that are watching and listening to think about, well, what is the cost of rework? What is the cost of putting something in place and realizing 6 months later that that was the bad decision? I have been there so many times. And that's why I have learned to embrace this process, because even though it might initially appear slower and maybe at times a little frustrating because we're not able to move as quickly as we would like, I find that the peace that comes through going through this path is worth it.
That's fantastic. And I love that, we hear all the time, go with your gut. It's like, well, hold on.
Yeah, yeah.
I think we could probably put a better framework to it and grasp. I've written all that down. I hope everybody else did it too. That's brilliant. And I love the part about proceeding in faith, because I think that's, in the world that I live in, it's like you get to that point where you just believe you're going to have a positive outcome, which is fantastic. So this has all been such great stuff. And I want to get down to, I call them my Fab Four, my final four questions.
Okay.
The first one is, what is something you will read, listen to, or watch today?
What I will read, listen to, or watch today. So I'm going to go with listen to. I am a big junkie on YouTube. I don't know if anyone else is out
YouTube
there.
University. Awesome.
Yeah, I am big on YouTube. And one of the things that I have been doing as a discipline, because learning financial stewardship is a journey for me as well, is I am listening to videos. And I say listen because I'm auditory, so I don't always watch, but I will turn YouTube on and listen to financial commentary. I will listen to different thoughts of points of view on what's going on in the economy and what steps I should be taking. I do that because it helps me to learn. I realize that this is an area of growth for me, and I want to learn to be a better steward for myself. And I also want to help others be better stewards. So YouTube University is what I say that I'm going to listen to.
I love it. Is there somebody that you would point to as a role model for you in your career and the work you're doing today?
Wow, a role model. That is really tough because there are so many people out there that are making an impact. If I had to choose one, who would it be?
And you don't have to choose just one.
Well, yeah, thank you for that. One of the people that I am really inspired by is Joyce Meyer. And the reason why she really inspires me is that she had a really tough upbringing. And when you have a tough upbringing, you really have a choice, right? Are you going to let this define you? And are you going to stay stuck in that? Or are you going to be able to use that experience to eventually help others? And she is a person that, for me, has done that really, really well. She openly shares about those challenges, but she didn't let it define her. One of the things that I also love about her, and many people don't know it, is that her ministry was very small in the beginning. She was serving in a church, and she was doing things in her local St. Louis area, very, very small events, operating in obscurity for a really long time before things started to grow. I've heard her talk about how, that her and Dave were really struggling financially because she eventually left her job in order to focus on ministry. And the dedication and faithfulness that she exhibited to the vision that God gave her is something that really inspires me. I thank God things have improved for me, but I'm still not where I want to be. So it's just a reminder. Yeah, it's just a reminder that being faithful to the vision will eventually pay off. So she's the one that I'll choose to highlight today.
That's a great answer. I love it. So kind of on that same lines, is there an organization out there that you really admire the work that they're doing or want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Advancing Native Missions. Advancing Native Missions does things a little bit differently. So I encourage those that are watching and listening, go on over to the website and check them out. What they do, instead of sending missionaries from the United States over to other countries, is they actually have people that are in that location to serve as missionaries. So it's about helping people that already have relationships, that already know the culture, that are already kind of enmeshed there, to empowering them to really make a difference. And I love that model. I think there's certainly value in people from the States going over. But when I learned about that, I was like, wow, that totally makes sense, because now you don't have the expenses from the flight and the housing and all of these things. You have someone that probably can get into the right conversations a little bit easier because they know the culture. But another thing that I love about advancing Native missions is that you can choose where you want your donation to go. I was almost overwhelmed when I went on the website, when I decided to support, how many different choices there are. Wow. But at the same time, I was also impressed, because that means, hey, the message is, we would love your support, but we recognize that there are different things that are, passions for different people. So we want to give you the flexibility to choose how your donation is used. So huge shout out to Advancing Native Missions.
Fantastic. Definitely somebody I need to learn more about. Lastly, most importantly, what's the best way to find you? If somebody wants to learn more about your work, if they want to contact you to work with you and benefit from all of your experience, what's the best way?
Yeah. So I would actually encourage people to do two things. One, I would love for you to connect with me on LinkedIn. That is the platform where I am spending a lot of time. It actually is a newer platform for me, but I'm loving the people that I'm meeting there, the conversations that are happening. So I'd love for you to look me up on LinkedIn and connect with me there. The second thing that I would love for you to do is just take note of both of our websites. So if you're looking for help in that Christian leadership space, maybe you're a nonprofit leader or you're leading a faith driven business and you want help making sure that you have all of the pieces together in order to be able to attract the funding that you need to grow and scale your mission, I'd love for you to connect with me at beaconship.co. And if you're in that space where you know that you need to do a better job of stewarding the opportunities, the donors that are in your database, people that have signed up on your website but haven't moved forward, and you want to reconnect with them, I'd love for you to visit me at leadreviver.pro. Jay, thank you for the opportunity to share that.
Of course. I will put all that in the show notes. Tamara, this has been a fabulously inspiring conversation. I love it. I've got 2 pages of notes here. I'm sure everybody else does that's been listening. But you're a blessing, and thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Jay. It's been great to be here.
Thanks for listening, and thanks to Tamara for sharing her experience, wisdom, and passion. This podcast was sponsored by JC Charity Services. Great organizations don't wait to react to change. They create change, and we would love to work with you to transform your team's mindset, leadership, and culture. Visit makingourworldbetter.com to learn how we can make positivity your competitive advantage. To learn more about Tamara and her work, visit beaconship.co and follow her on LinkedIn. Check the show notes for links, and if you enjoyed this podcast, we'd be grateful if you'd share it with a friend. Until next time, I hope you're inspired to find a way to make our world better.